Well, good afternoon. Thank you everyone for joining our webinar today. We'll be focused on covering the topic of methods for integrating your Microsoft Project Online PPM solution with third-party systems. We do have some upcoming webinars, and this is all based off of your feedback from previous webinars. Our next one on November 7th is all about leveraging the Microsoft Project Online solution to support resource management processes and procedures. And then we'll be closing up the calendar year with one on Microsoft Teams. We've had a lot of feedback from folks looking to integrate their project management solution into the new Microsoft Teams application that's part of Office 365. So we'll talk about and show some best practices, some experiences, and how other clients are doing that. Hopefully you can join us for one of those webinars. We do have some in-person events coming up, something called a Project Online Roadshow, which is an immersive half-day event that goes from 9 to 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We hosted one in Tampa, Florida last week. We have one coming up in Houston, Charlotte, Sacramento, California, and then Atlanta, Georgia. We'll have a couple more starting in December, January, and February as well. If you are interested, you can send us an email, info@Fragility.com, Attention Roadshow, and we'll get you hooked up with all the events that are coming up. And finally, all of the sessions we're delivering are being recorded. They are all available on our Vimeo webinar channel. You'll see the link here. We will send this out as a follow-up email as well. We also have the Fragility blog, which has common topics, best practices, and experiences around Project Online, Power BI, really integrating these with your processes, procedures, and people. But let's get right to our content today. My name is Rob Hirschman, partner with Fragility. I'm joined by my partner in crime, Tom Henry, an account executive here at Fragility. Jointly, we've got dozens of years of experience in the project portfolio management space, working with large enterprises to help them plan and implement the solution. If you do have questions during our webinar, we'll be taking those at the end. And we are recording this so you can share this with other folks in your organization. And Fragility is fairly well known in the marketplace as experts in the PPM space. Just like Gartner says, Microsoft does recommend working with experienced partners to help glue together processes, people, and the tools that they provide. We've been implementing the Microsoft PPM suite since 2005. We've got over 300 successful deployments under our belts and maintain a 98% on-time, on-budget delivery record with Microsoft PPM and related solutions. And we do offer services, deployment and consulting services around this, integrating it with line of business applications, which is something we'll be talking about today, as well as staffing your PMO and consulting. We have some pre-built software solutions called Hammerhead that assist with providing improved visibility, access, and controls into your data and migrating data from different environments. And finally, if you're looking to gain ongoing support for your PPM environment, we can provide that, whether it's staffing, whether it's a support contract, or providing ongoing training. So look to us as your really go-to partner in this space. But let's get right into our content today. Really our objective today is to provide you with an overview and some planning considerations for integrating your Project Online system by Microsoft with other applications. And when we're focused on other applications, obviously there's lots of other tools in the market you may want to integrate PPM with. One of those would be what we call a Developer Operations Suite, which is a tool like Jira or Visual Studio Team Services, now called Azure DevOps, which are tools that are used really by your IT shop, your development shop, to track and manage the work on development projects. Another popular tool set is IT service management tools, tools like ServiceNow, which has really grabbed a large part of the marketplace for ITSM, for upfront demand management, idea management, and also trouble ticketing. And finally, ERP applications, systems like SAP. We're not going to really focus on the third one because there's lots of possibilities there, but do understand there is a lot of experience that we bring to the table in this area. So our agenda, the first thing we're going to talk about is some typical business scenarios for integration. What are some of the key questions you want to ask? And more importantly, how do you go about building a business case? So the why. Why do I want to actually do integration? These are some questions you want to ask and start to build out a reason or a rationale or a business case for doing it. We're then going to start mapping out some of these tools to your PPM lifecycle, which is really what you're going to do. Walk you through some different typical integration scenarios, and obviously there's lots of different ones based off of your organization, your processes, and your systems, but these are some examples, and we'll also walk you through 2 customer case studies and how integration was implemented. Talk through some different integration considerations if you are looking down the road to integrating Project Online with other systems, and then also give you a little bit of a note about pre-built integration products, some of the pluses and minuses to looking at a product versus a services-driven approach, and finally give you some contact information for reaching out and getting help if you are interested. Again, we'll be taking questions at the end. So the overall business scenario when we're working with clients, and maybe this is typical to your environment, is you're planning a deployment of Project Online to support typical PPM functionality. That would be project scheduling, it would be resource forecasting, capacity planning, it may be demand management, it may be intake, portfolio management, as well as day-to-day project management, collaboration, time tracking, and reporting. All the things Project Online is really good at, delivered through the cloud. You also know that having key data from other systems touching your PPM data will help you make better business decisions. And you could have a system that does IT service management, services development operations, does financial management, but what you really want to do is build a plan and a business case for implementing not only PPM, but also integrating it with other systems. By integrating with other systems, it adds value. It also involves complexity, and it involves touching other people across the business that you wouldn't typically touch if you were just deploying Project Online. So we're going to talk about some of those things as we go through this. So ideally, this is one of the business scenarios you're facing. You're looking to implement PPM, and you're also looking to have it access other information from other systems. The reality, though, when you're integrating PPM, after you've gotten it up and running, organizations that integrate their PPM solution with a third-party tool, they tend to see a lot more value from PPM, and they see it as a longer-term commitment for management than just implementing PPM on its own. Those are the folks that are really treating PPM as an enterprise system they're going to rely on for enterprise decision-making information. It's not a tool they're setting up just to temporarily solve a specific problem or meet the requirements of a program. And one of the real benefits of going down the road of doing integration with your PPM system is, number one, it creates stickiness with that application. It's harder to get users away from that as they start to look at other applications that are different. So it gets all your data and your information in an enterprise repository for driving controls and reporting. It also shows the overall organization's investment in project and portfolio management from a business process perspective. So we find that organizations that actually integrate their PPM system with other tools tend to be more successful long-term than ones that do not. So the first step in this is to actually understand, why do you want to do integration? Not just let's integrate it because we want to, it's what's the business rationale? So we've come up with some key questions you want to start asking if you're thinking about building a business case for integrating Project Online with another system. The first question, it may seem obvious, is why do we need the integration? What is the business need behind this? And also, what specific value is this integration going to provide to our organization? We may have already articulated the case for change for implementing PPM in Project Online, but why do I want to actually take data from another system and either move it into PPM or take data from PPM and move it out into that application? What's the actual business value we're going to be receiving? Another key question we want to ask is, who in the organization is this going to impact? Who are the key stakeholders and end users? If you think about PPM on its own, you're going to be touching project managers, maybe the PMO, portfolio managers, and team members, maybe folks in IT or the business. But if you start to touch financial systems or HR systems or service management systems, that broadens the impact, it broadens the stakeholders, and it potentially broadens the end users that are going to be accessing information from PPM to make decisions. So you want to start mapping that out, and that's going to help drive your case for change. You want to think about what the cost for integration is. This is a lot of times the first question people ask, and we kind of back it up to the first three before this. We can only estimate out the cost if we start thinking about the value, who it impacts, and then technically what needs to be done to get there. And also, one of the key things you want to look at is, who's going to benefit from this integration? Is it only the PMO, or are there people in finance and operations and HR that are going to benefit from getting access to this information? So some really good key questions to start asking. You also want to start to map out within your business case the cost and the value, and have these things linked together. It's not just about cost. So one of the core components is the implementation of Project Online. You're implementing it based on specific PPM business requirements you have a cost. You've also built out a business case that shows an ROI or some kind of a value around things like improving efficiency, reducing your cost of project overruns, replacing any kind of manual reporting, or providing management controls and visibility. These are the typical return on investment and metrics you're going to have. When you start lining up the integration points, you're going to break each one out individually. You're going to detail the design and development of that integration. You're going to start talking about what the effort and cost is going to be, people and dollars wise. And then you want to start mapping out what's the value of that integration. Streamlining data access for reporting is a very, very typical one. Reducing redundant work and data, not having to go to two different systems, making sure you have consistent data across those systems to drive decision making. Reducing cost overruns on your projects by a certain amount of money. Having kind of the swivel chair, being able to look at one place versus two or three to get access to data so you can make more consistent decisions. So map out those value points that you came up with by asking those questions in the previous slide to start building out the details in the business case mapped to the value. What are some typical integration scenarios? This is really what we're going to do. So we first want to go about mapping out our PPM lifecycle. And that's the graphic you see at the top. We may begin our lifecycle with intake and demand management initiation. Then we may go through formal selection. What projects are we going to do and why? What efforts are we going to do that are non-project related? We get into our detailed planning of the work. Then we're going to be managing and reporting on it. Then we're going to be closing projects out and doing best practices. Below that, you'll see the different systems. From a work stream perspective, IT service management really hits this lifecycle up front. When we're looking at tools like ServiceNow or Remedy Now, that's where we're going to be going in and actually getting all the requests coming into the IT organization into our service management tool. We may want to integrate that, or a scenario would be all IT requests come into our ITSM tool. Projects, once they become projects, are going to be managed by our project managers who are going to use tools like Project and Project Online. And often what we want is we want the data from ITSM to flow back into project, and then project information to flow back into ITSM to support portfolio reporting. So a CIO can look at one dashboard and see all the operational work and all the project work and understand the status and health and risk related to all of those in one place. So it's really having a total view of the work is really the use or the business case, the use case behind IT service management integration. One of the other use cases is also resource allocation. It's very hard to understand what people are working on unless you have a view into their entire book of business, everything they're working on. An ITS service management system can do the front end part of that, but the project management system is going to have all the actual work and the actual project-based effort. We want to bring all this information together and integrate ITSM in that initiation that'll flow over into planning and management at some point. Another scenario, when we start looking at the developer operations suites like Visual Studio Team Services and Jira, that's where we're planning and managing the work. We've already made decisions on what we're going to do. You might have multiple methodologies. So in the case of a developer operations tool, a lot of times we want to allow our developers to use the tools they use every day to track their progress, but send that back to the correct project manager for approvals, acceptance, and application from a reporting perspective. A lot of organizations have moved to more of an agile project management methodology. So organizations that have waterfall and agile, or maybe a mix of those, Wagile or Scrumfall, you want to support agile, but you want to support agile in the agile tools. You don't want to force people to use non-agile tools to do agile project management. And this is a good scenario for actually integrating in a tool like Jira into Project Online. A lot of times we want the data to flow to Project Online to support schedule and progress updates. We want it to flow from Project Online to our developer operations tool to support new work creation. So we actually want to go one direction or the other direction here. And finally, a lot of times we want data to flow to Project Online to support resource planning. We may have a look into all of our waterfall projects in Project Online, but if the agile work's being done in Jira or VSTS, we want to pull that over so we can do resource allocations and forecasting, something that Project Online really is very strong at. So one of our recommendations is to map out your PPM lifecycle, the different lifecycle phases and stages you have, to other systems and start to identify where those touch points would be, what the scenario for each one would be, what systems would be involved, and start to map this out. And that'll drive a lot of your use cases and what's coming after your business case. So this is kind of getting to the next level, what we're going to be doing. So I'll give you a couple of case studies here of some organizations that have actually worked with us to integrate tools like ITSM into Project Online. The first one, we integrated ServiceNow in with Project Online. The business scenario, we had a new CIO who came in, and she actually wanted to move the organization completely to ServiceNow for everything on the front end. They had a very, very old system that was their help desk system, and the vision she had was to capture all of the work from tickets to all the project intake to the projects and requests coming in a single system. And that's really what ServiceNow was going to be used for, which is pretty typical in this day and age in IT shops where you have a new CIO who doesn't have a good picture of all the work. But for larger projects, anything over $500,000 in spend, that work was going to be managed in Project and Project Online. Real project management tools, real project managers, building out detailed WBSs, tracking issues and risks and deliverables. Things that ServiceNow isn't really designed for, but can support the flow of data back into. So from an integration perspective, the requirement was from ServiceNow to Project Online, project initiation, approvals and allocation would happen in ServiceNow, and that would flow into Project Online. And then Project Online would send data back to ITSM or ServiceNow with updates, status, progress, dates, and resources. The value behind this integration was fourfold. Number one, it supported her vision of the single source of the truth. Everything was coming in and being reported out of ServiceNow. But it also acknowledged that successful project management would have to happen in a formal project management tool, in Project and Project Online. So all the project execution, tracking, and reporting would all happen in Project Online. There's no single system, which was one of the keys, and even the CIO admitted this. There's no single system that can meet every part of the organization's need. We have to go with best-of-breed products, which is a lot more popular now than trying to kind of twist tools around to meet a specific need, and it might not need it, especially when you have hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars in IT spend on projects. You want to think about a dedicated project management system. And it really leverages the strength of each system. That's really the key. So to give you a little bit of an example of the workflow, I'm going to kind of go from one direction to the other here. When we went from ServiceNow on the left to Project Online on the right, the first use case was creating new projects. And this is where a new project request would come in. Through everything in ServiceNow was a ticket. It would become a ticket, and on demand, based on something becoming a formal project request, once that project request was approved by management, it would flow over through ServiceNow's API. They have a REST-based API. It would go through an Azure environment, which was owned by the client or leveraged by the client, where the integration application ran. The business logic would pick the information up, and it would actually determine the type of project being created, application, infrastructure, new business, and then it would go over to Project Online through Project Online's API, in a REST-based API called CSOM, and it would actually apply the project request, apply the project ID, so there was a consistent relationship between project IDs in both systems for reporting. It would apply the project type, the schedule template, and also a SharePoint site template, as well as pre-populate fields in Project Online with ServiceNow metadata. Once we were in Project Online, the project manager would get notified. All of this would be pre-populated, and then he or she would go in and start building out the actual work plan. This is after a project has been approved, it is instantiated in ServiceNow, and then is created for its management purposes in Project Online. So use case number one with the integration with ServiceNow is the creation of a new project from one system flowing into another with consistent data flowing throughout to support reporting. Going the other way, once the project was initiated and was being managed in Project Online on the left, the organization, the CIO, wanted that information updated in ServiceNow to support reporting. So what we did from there is we again leveraged the APIs, just flowing the other direction, and built out within that integration layer the business rules. So when a user would go in and update their project, it would actually publish the information out, and based on a scheduled basis or a listening basis, it would take the data from that project, the health, the cost, the schedule status, the resource information, and the work, and pull that over and pull that into ServiceNow for updating, where it would actually update the information on that case or the incident in ServiceNow, and then the project information on that incident, and then that would be kept up to date for reporting perspective, as well as to drive consistent dashboarding and reports. So this is the flow of data the other way after the project has been initiated and is being controlled and managed. It's being done in the project management system in Office 365 and Project Online, but the executives have visibility and tracking across not only tickets, but projects within ServiceNow. And this really does flow in terms of a best practice approach in terms of how you do it and what the technology layer would look like. So some initial planning considerations before we get into the Jira integration. With integrating your ServiceNow or your ITSM application with PPM, the first question you want to ask is, what is going to be the system of record for tracking and reporting progress? If it's going to be in ServiceNow, you have to start thinking, what is the purpose of Project Online? And if a project manager updates something in project, do they want to pull it over? Is it going to overwrite information in ServiceNow, or is ServiceNow going to overwrite project information? Because remember, a Microsoft project, that scheduling engine is very powerful. And when changes are made, it flows throughout different projects, which is really the power of having a centralized PPM tool, is the ability to do your what-if analysis. How will you do resource management? This is a really, really big one. It was for our CIO in that organization we mentioned, is she really wanted a view into resource utilization across projects and non-project activities in the same place. Where is that going to occur? Do I need to synchronize resource information between the two systems? How am I going to leverage the resource pool in Project Online? How am I going to set up things like resource availability and utilization? So all of that is really important if you're going to look at doing resource management and utilization. Are you using ServiceNow for what they call IT service management, IT business management, or both of those? That's going to determine which of the modules you're going to be integrating with ServiceNow and Project Online, because ITBM has some PPM components. ITSM is purely for ticket management. So you want to really, that API is written to pull data from either or both of those components, but you really have to do it with the right end in mind. What's your overall vision for project portfolio management? What's the roadmap look like and where you're headed? And how does that play in with what you're doing with your ServiceNow system? Additionally, you want to ask the question, what tools do you prefer your project managers use on a day-to-day basis? If it's going to be Microsoft Project, this integration may make a lot of sense. What level of detail are they tracking? And is it the same level of detail that you'd want to update or report on over in ServiceNow? Additionally, what's the best way to keep the data synchronized, assuming you have a different system with a different purpose? Is it automated integration like we showed you? Is it some kind of manual integration? Is it a combination of those, auto manual? So there's different techniques for doing this that we'll talk about in a little bit. So just some thoughts when you're thinking about integrating your ITSM tool into Project Online. Case study 2. This is where we're integrating Jira in with Project Online, our developer operations tool. The business scenario working with this client, the organization had adopted Agile for development and some of their non-development projects. They actually had some projects that were outside of IT. They were managing using an Agile methodology. They had deployed Atlassian's Jira tool to their development teams, and they had implemented Project Online for portfolio management, resource management, project management, time tracking, and collaboration, all the core things PPM is really good at. So from an integration perspective, what we needed to do is really work with that client to design and build out the workflow and the process as follows. First, from a Project Online perspective, we were going to take a new project when it was initiated in Project Online after it had been approved, and then it would go and create a matching project in Jira, a one-to-one. So we'd start from Project Online and move it over to Jira so we had a one-to-one matching with the project, unique project IDs for reporting purposes. Then in Jira, when the Agile project elements were built out, whether it's iterations, epics, and sprints, they're going to be built out in Jira. A level of detail was established based off of their template, what level they wanted to track at, and then that information was going to flow back over into Project Online at that level. We'll talk about the different levels in a couple minutes, mainly to update project detail, finish dates, and resources to support project and portfolio planning in the PPM side. Additionally, as progress was tracked in Jira, we also needed to take some of that data and flow it back to status, the schedules, and the resources. There's some challenges around this going from Jira to Project Online, mainly from a functional perspective that I'll talk about in a couple of minutes. Technically, we can certainly do it. The value of this integration, number one, your developers would work in one tool, so you'd have them, especially the Agile ones who had been trained in Agile, they weren't ever going to touch the project management system. They were working in Jira, which is their typical tool of choice. PMs had the ability to control the project, the schedule, the status, the health, and get updates as the work progressed. And it also provided an integrated view of the project information from both systems. So instead of having two reports, inconsistent data, Project A and the two systems didn't match up, the data was consistent at an agreed upon level. That's the most important part. So there was a lot of value in integrating these two tools. So just to show you a little bit of the process flow here, with Project Online on our left and Jira on our right, the project was initiated in Project Online, and then that data was moved over into Jira. The phase level schedule was built out in Project Online, and that was moved over into Jira. So it was done at a very high level, at a phase level. Resources were assigned in Project Online, and then we're matching resources over in Jira. So we had a one-to-one match from a resource perspective. That's really important for resource forecasting. As developers were progressing their work, one of the challenges with using a tool like Jira, especially in an Agile environment, it's the status is started, in progress, done. Now, what does that mean when you're looking at a project schedule and a resource that's been assigned work on a task for 80 hours? What does in progress mean? What does started mean? Is it 10%, 30%? It's very hard to get your hands around that. So what the organization did is they created a battle card that defined percentages complete for those and defined work for those. And then on a weekly basis, the developers would actually go into their timesheet in Project Online, actually had it on their mobile devices as well, take 5 minutes and update the hours they worked on each of the iterations or sprints and submitted that back to the project manager. So this is the part that was more manual than automated, mainly because of the challenges in getting the right level of detail with defining progress on the right with what progress means in a schedule on the left. The project manager would then reforecast the work and drive project management reports from Project Online. So we keep people in the tool they typically use, minus time tracking, which could be done from a mobile device or it could be done in a web browser. It only takes 5 minutes of a person's day. So there wasn't enough intrinsic value in building out the integration to go backwards from Jira to Project Online. And also there was a lot of confusion in terms of defining what started in progress done meant in terms of how many hours somebody worked on something. So that was a manual action that was put in place. And one of the challenges, and I mentioned before, with integrating a developer operations tool and a PPM tool really has to do with defining language and structure. And if you think about it, everything in Jira is an issue. So there are really 5 different levels that we can map information in Jira into information in Project Online. So a task in Project Online could be a Jira issue. A task in Project Online could be an epic, it could be a story, it could be a sprint, or a single task could represent just high-level resource allocation, which is one approach to it as well. So with 5 different ways we can link these. If you think about it in Jira, a lot of times people aren't using any kind of templates. They're doing it in an agile methodology. Some people have epics, some have sprints, some have stories. Ideally, they're following a consistent method, but they aren't always. So if I have one project that's tracking an epic level, another one's got detailed stories, another one has sprint stories and epics, how do I aggregate this information? And how do I map that over to schedules that are in Project Online when there's no consistency there? So this is one of the challenges, is defining that. If your organization can define what level you want to track at, the integration can happen in an automated way. If it can't do that, and if you're going to allow each of the Agile teams to work as they want to work, you're always going to have challenges with statusing. So there's many different options to consider, really is the message here. What you should really understand and get your hands around is a way to standardize on a specific level you want to integrate. What data do I want to integrate at what level in order to be successful, be able to do project statusing? This is an example here of an option of integrating Project Online with a task hierarchy that's in a Jira issue scheme. So on the left we have Jira. At the top level of Jira we have program objectives. Then below that we have a project, which we're going to have a match for. Then we're going to have an issue scheme, which has an initiative, an epic, stories, and people assigned to those. And within each of those stories you're going to have one or multiple sprints that have start and finish dates. So you've got people in Jira that are updating that information. Over in Project Online on the right, we've got a schedule. And that schedule can have the initiative, it can have the epic, and it can have the different stories that have assignees, start and finish dates. So you can see there's a direct relationship there. In Jira, we have what are called Jira users. In Project Online, we have what's called an enterprise resource pool, which has all of your resources. And below all that, we have Active Directory. So we can have consistency across the users and control that. But really what's important is we want tasks to align at the right level of detail. So if some projects are tracking at a story level, some have sprints, some have iterations. You want to make sure you have consistency so when data is updated in one system, at least the language is consistent with the other. There's automation opportunities down at the right to create projects in both systems, to have tasks automatically aligned between Jira and Project Online, and we can automatically synchronize start and finish dates and assign resources from the 2 systems. So there is the value of integration here and the potential for integration if you have consistency. But here's another option. So let's say we have Project Online and we also just track our projects at an epic level. So if we're tracking at an epic level, but in Jira we've got stories and sprints, you can see we've got a different level of detail that's in Project Online, in our schedule, than we're going to have in Jira. So how do we want to aggregate that information? Is it going to roll up to the epic level and pull that over? So again, automated creation of projects, statusing of tasks, simplified maintenance. We really have to agree on how we're going to use those 2 systems. And there's 5 or 6, as I mentioned, different options for doing this. So some of the planning challenges and considerations, and this is just us kind of stepping back, working with our clients that do Agile today. So one of the challenges with developer organizations that are moving to adopt Agile is a lot of times management is in the dark about progress. They don't know how things are going. If something's not done in a sprint, it gets pushed to the next sprint, and then we move it to the next sprint. Maybe we move it to the next iteration, and we're rolling this up to different epics. So a lot of developers and development communities we work with, they love Agile simply because it allows them to move the work out, to do the work, when it, not just when it's scheduled and when it's due, but they can do it when it best fits into a sprint structure. This is very difficult from a project management perspective, from a resource and cost planning perspective. Because the way Agile tools like Jira work, there's not really an effective way to track these delays and specifically their impact. So think about it as there's really no baseline in Jira. It's just the nature of the way Agile works. So the challenge really becomes understanding what's involved in these activities and how are you going to track them to show progress. Agile tools like Jira also don't track a lot of success factors that are in a project management system like time and cost. Really, they're designed to track the work and the progress on those. So from a time and a cost perspective, you're always going to need a PPM tool. They also provide limited visibility across the portfolio definitely across resources, not across costs and work, as well as provide the kind of reporting. So if you're trying to track on sprints and epics and iterations and how that's going, Jira and VSTS are great tools. If you're trying to look at a portfolio level and roll that up and make business decisions about projects, it's not necessarily the best place to do it. We also find, and this is one of the key challenges, very few organizations have dedicated teams just working on Agile. Mainly they're mixed. You have people that are working on Agile and waterfall projects, which means you're in a mixed mode, which means you're tracking the same people on multiple types of projects, and you're tracking people in different ways. You're tracking actual hours and work remaining on your waterfall projects with Jim, but Jim's also working on an Agile project where he's just going to be updating the status of his sprints and started in progress complete. It makes progressing even harder, and a lot of times it can confuse teams. So when you're going down the road of planning integration between a developer operations tool and Project Online, some key questions. The first one is always, what metrics are you looking to report against for your waterfall projects, your Agile, and your hybrid projects? You can start at the top level and talk about reporting and metrics and kind of work your way backwards with that. The second key question is, what level of detail do you need to track within your Agile projects? User story, iteration, epic, sprint, all of those, some of those, none of those, and are you going to have consistency across all of your projects that are in Jira or VSTS so that you can link that back to statusing your portfolio appropriately? A big question is, where do you want people tracking time? Do you want them actually progressing work in Jira versus one of the Jira add-ons or VSTS? At what level? Story, iteration, epic, and sprint? Or are they going to go into Project Online and just enter their timesheet every week against one of those levels? And finally, how are you going to account for all of a resource's time across both projects? This is kind of the magic question you can start asking, is I've got people working on all kinds of projects, not just Agile projects, so how do I capture a look at all their time? And maybe I'm just tracking Agile projects at a very high level from a time tracking perspective. Project A, how many hours did you work? And how many hours are you going to be working in the next 6 months, right? Versus a waterfall project, you're down at more of an activity or a task level. And this is for resource allocation, cost management, cost budgeting and forecasting, maybe even chargeback and bill back as well. Another consideration has to do with reporting. A lot of organizations we work with are not only going to Office 365, they're going to Power BI. The nice thing about Power BI is it provides a very good, strong foundation for not only reporting on Project Online data, but data from other systems. What it does is it makes merging your data from different sources, ServiceNow, Jira, Visual Studio, any developer operations tool, your help desk tool, and project management information a lot easier. You can build integrated data models between them. So instead of doing systems integration, a lot of organizations are getting a jump start on this by doing data integration. So like on the dashboard you see below, you see we have a Visual Studio Team Services, a VSTS, and Project Online dashboard on the left. We can see our work items, we can see our work items and sprints, we can see our issues, we can see our project budget. It's merging together data from both systems, so for a manager and executive, they're actually getting the perception that all the data is in one place, but it's essentially pointing back to the data source that's appropriate. Same thing goes for Jira on the right. There's connectivity into Jira, so we can look at, again, our issues, our epics, our sprints, our burn downs, leverage Jira for what it's really good at, and then bring that information together into integrated dashboards where I can do portfolio management. Or down at the bottom, we can have a ServiceNow dashboard. We can see all of our trouble tickets, our issues that are coming in, our incidents, and map that over with our projects and start to do resource allocation between the two systems. So wrapping a BI layer around this, at some point, you're going to be reporting out of it. You can even get a jump start by doing some basic Power BI reporting across the systems as you develop your integration strategy. And then that reduces the risk. Now I'm doing data integration versus pure systems integration. The reality is, most of the time, it's really going to involve both systems integration, data integration, and reporting. So you're really going to get into a world of looking at multiple components. So one quick note: we've been approached by a lot of folks about, hey, I heard this hot consulting firm has this pre-built integration tool that let me integrate Project Online and ServiceNow. Companies are offering these integration tools, their accelerators, their platforms, they're all kind of different things. What we really recommend you do is ask a lot of questions before you go down the road of purchasing a product. The reality is any integration you do between two systems is going to be unique to your two systems. How you've set Project Online up, how you've set ServiceNow up, any kind of customization you've done to either system, what your environment looks like. You have data coming from another system as well. So that's all unique to your environment, no matter how many commercial off-the-shelf tools you use. While out-of-the-box integration tools can add value, they support what we call a single methodology. So anytime you move away from the way they're built, it's going to require customizing another tool. So you're bringing another tool into your environment. And that, a lot of times, also involves putting their tool out in a third-party cloud. A lot of times, their subscription is a service. So actually, your data oftentimes can sit outside of your enterprise, which may create some security considerations. So the recommendation here is that you work with a partner who can help you understand and present options for integration, help you do the analysis on what integration you need to do, what the business scenarios are, what the business case, support your business case, but provide you with the right solution. A tool can be part of a solution, but it is not a solution in and of itself. And what we found is we've actually gone in and replaced a couple of these other tools. It can end up costing you less, and it can be better fit to your needs, and there's no ongoing management and maintenance costs around subscription services. So if you're looking at integrating, remember there's no magic box that does it. Every organization is different. Your processes and people are different. Your systems are going to be different. Even though they're commercial off the shelf, you really need something tailor fit to your needs. Yep. Every integration environment is different. So before we jump into our Q&A, we just want to know that we're really here as a resource to you, whether you're thinking about deploying Project Online, whether you already have it in place, you want to develop a roadmap for integrating it with some of the different tools we talked about today, whether you're going down the road of, hey, now we really need to deploy this, we've defined our use cases, come in and help us really do that. We have a lot of experience building out the API extensions and integrating Project Online with other tools like ServiceNow, like Jira, like VSTS. Tools like version 1, as well as tools like SAP and Oracle in the ERP world. We can help you reduce your risk, help you build and document a solution, and then make it supportable in your environment so you know what you need to do to manage and maintain that and document it all. So we can help support these integrations as well. If you're interested in talking about this or any integration requirements you have, you can reach out, info@fragility.com, attention PPM integration, or you can reach out to your account executives, such as Tom Henry, who's on the phone here today. We are going to send you a link to a couple of questions. If you just answer the 3-question survey, we would very much appreciate it. And just to summarize, we do have some upcoming webinars, one on managing your resources and capacity planning in Project Online. That's going to be in November. And another one leveraging the new Microsoft Teams application as part of your PPM solution. Where is this going and what can the tools do? So hopefully you can join us for one of those sessions. With this point, we're going to put our contact information up and we're going to stop the recording.